Hey, Christian. Good to see you.
Hi, Christian. Good to be seen.
Weirdly enough, you're wearing the same clothes as...
Last episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because we just got done recording the last episode.
That is weird.
We are batch recording.
Lucky you guys.
Yeah, because you're going to be out of town, right? You're going to be like hanging out in the sun next week?
I'm going to be... so whenever this episode releases, I will have just been in, likely, Tucson, Arizona. Never been.
Really?
Nope.
Yeah.
I know it's weird, right?
I like Arizona. I've lived in Arizona and Texas.
I've been to Texas.
Okay.
Everything's big in Texas.
It is.
Just not in Austin.
Big.
But I'm excited to go to Tucson for the sunsets and hopefully the pool that will be available to swim in, which I have not set foot inside of a pool for the last year or more.
Are you a pool guy?
I'm a pool guy.
Yeah.
Lifeguard, swim instructor, swim coach, all that sort of stuff.
And I thought I knew you, Christian.
I know, you don't. You don't. I led a double life, an aquatic life.
So, if you were given a choice between beach and mountain.
Mountain.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I just figured like pool, beach, but...
Well, so I love pools, but growing up here in the Pacific Northwest, we have, all this, we have rocky beaches.
Yeah, our beaches here suck.
Yeah, well...
They suck.
Yes, they're not good for laying around on. They're good for hunting stuff on, which I did a lot
Slimy,
of that.
cold, fishy smelling
Gooey
stuff.
ducks,
Yeah.
crabs, clams,
Sure.
oysters, all that sort of stuff. Well...
I'm going to edit all that out because that was garbage. Okay, go ahead.
Leave it in there.
Okay.
So, welcome to another episode of the Old Fashioned Dad Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We love having you all, and I love being able to sit here with you.
It's good.
Yeah. We got whiskey, we got cigars, we got, not for you guys, but for us, but we have a topic.
Pull up your whiskey
Yeah,
and
do
cigar
that.
while you're listening to this.
Digital whiskey and digital cigar. We can't necessarily have that with you, but we'll do it with you virtually, because that is what relationship and discipleship is all about. We are the Old Fashioned Dad Podcast, seeking to love dads and men through the person and work of Jesus Christ, while entering into tough conversations on marriage, mental health, sex, and parenting, all while sipping good whiskey.
So, Christian, are you implying
Maybe.
with that intro that we are discipling our listeners? That's a far stretch.
Maybe.
That's a far stretch.
Sort of. Yes. At the very least, trying to have some sort of influence over the way that you think, conduct yourself as parents.
All right, Shia LaBeouf.
Thank you. You got me on that one. I look like Shia LaBeouf had a bad day.
Referencing a podcast a few episodes ago.
So yeah, we are. I am implying overtly that we are going to be talking about discipleship today, and the good stuff that I think is there for dads. We are also getting into some whiskey. We've already made some cocktails, which we had on the previous podcast, and we are enjoying now on this episode of this podcast. Manhattan, Black Manhattan.
Yes.
And the whiskey that we will be sampling, Hatozaki. I hope I pronounced that right. A Japanese whiskey, which I don't think at this point we have had a Japanese whiskey on the podcast. I don't believe.
The episode with Chris Flugstad, he brought some Japanese whiskey.
He might have. I don't quite remember, but if you are confident in that...
That's because he brought like 5 whiskeys.
He did. He was a great guest to have.
He was a good
we
guest.
should have another guest that has 5 whiskeys next time. Which was a great episode on success.
Success, entrepreneurship.
Yeah, go back to our 41 episodes that we have recorded, which is nuts to me. And check out that episode. And check out all the other episodes. And then subscribe and then leave a positive review. Awesome. So we're going to also continue smoking our cigars from Standard & Twain, which I very much enjoy.
Yeah,
Thank you, Standard & Twain. You guys rock. Check them out. They do that whole blind bag tasting, which I think is really awesome. And they give you a QR code that you can, scan and See what your cigar is.
Yeah, and what's the website? Is it
standardandtwain.com?
Spelled out, Standard and Twain.
That's right. Yes, okay. Not standard ampersand Twain. Standardandtwain.com. Yeah. So we're talking about discipleship today, which kind of, in a way, our digital virtual hat, we kind of reached in, we pulled out,
plucked it out,
the crumpled piece of paper, and we folded it, and it said discipleship on it. So we're like, you know what, we're going to go with that.
There you go. So what is discipleship, and why does it matter? I mean,
what is discipleship?
It's kind of a, I guess, uniquely Christian thing.
I kind of view it as the Christian form of mentorship. Is that fair? Is that fair to say?
It's a type of mentorship with a specific goal in mind. Yeah.
There's some nuances to discipleship. Like, I think one of the nuances to discipleship is the person that is being discipled is becoming more Christ-like. Where the person that's simply being mentored, may not necessarily be the goal.
Sure, there's all sorts of other goals of types of mentorships. Sure.
Right. So could discipleship be a form of mentorship?
Sure.
Yeah.
All discipling is mentoring, not all mentoring is discipleship.
Oh. Just kind of like all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon?
There you go.
Wow. Right. Mind blown. Thanks for tuning into our TED Talk.
So why did you want to talk about discipleship today?
Well, we'll get down to brass tacks. I think that many dads can benefit from discipleship, healthy discipleship.
Have you been discipled?
I have been discipled.
Like formally?
Yes. I would say that I have been formally discipled and plenty of informal discipleship. Now, and when I'm talking about dads can benefit from discipleship, I'm talking about dads that maybe are veteran dads, discipling younger dads, and they've been able to walk through, say, challenging issues raising your kids and being able to incorporate being a godly dad, a godly father, and walking through sin that they might commit in parenting. And so having that discipleship that produces or provides, I should say, accountability. There's that word, accountability. But this word I love even more is encouragement. I think encouragement is vital to a young dad's growth in being a parent, and I think that can absolutely come through the vehicle that is discipleship.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's essential, and I think, I don't want to speak for you, I'll speak for me. I think the reason, thank you, appreciate it. I think the reason it's important to talk about is because as men, at least in my experience, it's very easy to kind of be a bit of an island.
Lone wolf it?
Yeah, it's women I think tend to be more relational, which is why they have their women's nights out and
absolutely,
and that kind of stuff. While us
they're not afraid to talk about emotional stuff.
Right. Well, and in general, I think women relate to each other, face to face, right? Very relational, very direct. While men tend to relate to each other side by side. We're doing something. We have a common goal in mind.
We're golfing. We're drinking whiskey. We're building a house.
Sure. Men typically don't get together for tea to just chat about the week.
Well, you don't.
Not that there's anything unmanly about tea, but we're more, bourbon and whiskey kind of guys. But
that's why we get together and smoke cigars and drink whiskey.
But I guess clarifying and correct me if you think I'm wrong here.
Okay.
I don't think our relationship is one of discipleship. It's more of fellowship. We're peers, and we're hopefully iron sharpening iron. With each other in similar life stages, as opposed to discipleship in the formal sense would be more like, hey, I'm a younger dude and I want to find a more mature Christian man who is in the next life stage as me, that can mentor me, teach me, point me to Christ, help me through practical and spiritual issues to become more mature.
Yeah, I do think that our friendship, our relationship is absolutely 99% fellowship. And I do think there are moments of discipleship because there's just areas that, you and I are both strong in that maybe you're not in and I'm not in. And so there is areas for discipleship amidst the fellowship. But I think primarily it is fellowship. for sure. Yeah, good distinction to make.
Yeah. So I mean, like, this podcast has been huge for me, just to have another Christian dude to talk through issues, and have, our audience eavesdrop in on it, and hopefully, it's a good, people are learning stuff. It's always encouraging to me. But I think this topic is important because we tend, I'll speak for myself, I tend not to be super intentional in my relationships. And there's been moments in my life where I've had very intentional relationships that were discipling. Like, one that was super impactful to me to this day was, I was in my 20s. I mean, I was a mess in my 20s. I didn't know what I was doing. And,
me too, huh?
Yeah, me too, yeah. And I mean, I've got, I don't have anything to hide. So, I mean, at that point in time, I was a Christian. You might call it backslidden or whatever. I was sleeping with my girlfriend at the time, secret relationship, and it was found out. And one of the guys I really respected in my life, we just kind of knew, like, okay, this thing had to end. We'd part ways, and our networks and community were intertwined. And we're like, okay, well, you take this part of it, I'll take that. Just so, like, our lives don't really intertwine. One of those was a Bible study that I was invited to. That was part of this, and that was a big hit for me to lose that. And much to my surprise, the leader of the Bible study reached out to me, and offered to, like, get together one-on-one and disciple me.
Wow.
And that had a huge impact on me, because at that point in my life I was much more legalistic, and I'm like, I don't deserve that. Like, I lied to him, I lied to the community, I was, in sin, and I was discovered. Like, I'm gonna go, in my shame, I'm gonna, I'm gonna go away by myself and do my penance or whatever, that looks like. And so his grace and mercy and example of Christ to me was huge.
Wow.
And we just met outside of that group one-on-one, and it was super impactful to me. Just how he encouraged me and pointed me to Christ, and because his kids, I'm friends with his kids, but I mean, at the time his kids were teenagers. I was in my 20s, so I guess he was probably 10, 15 years older than me, and and still has this, really impactful place in my life. And, when I got engaged to my wife, like, he was the first one, him and his wife, that I told, and they met with us and, kind of did some counseling. So, I mean, like, that was, biblical, godly discipleship that made a huge impact on my life as, just kind of a jacked up young man that I was. And while that was kind of a formal discipleship, there's also, I think, a lot of informal discipleships that happen, where we just kind of naturally, through church or community groups, small groups, whatever you call them, we just kind of get into these relationships with older Christian men that we can learn from. That they've maybe have kids that are out of the house now, and we can learn from as they've made their mistakes, and practically speaking, with parenting or with being a husband, that kind of stuff. And I guess I bring this up because it's super important to maybe recognize, if you tend to go it alone, like before this podcast, and our, kind of getting together regularly, I didn't really have any guys speaking into my life. I was just kind of, white knuckling it and getting through it and trying to figure out how to be a dad and a husband, and didn't have any other iron to sharpen my sword against, so to speak. And I think fellowship can provide some of that, but I think there's the kind of a deeper level of discipleship where instead of just two knuckleheads trying to figure it out together, it's someone who can say, hey, I made these mistakes. Have you thought about this? I think this is what God's telling me about where you are right now, and that kind of stuff.
That's interesting. As you share your own experiences with discipleship, I can really clearly think about some of my own. Definitely made plenty of the wrong choices in my 20s, but as I think about kind of this, if this episode had a title, it's like fellowship and discipleship, because it's like both are equally important.
Yeah.
As I'm thinking about it, like I came into this conversation thinking like, we're going to talk about discipleship, but as I'm thinking about it more, it's like both are, equal in terms of their importance in a dad's life.
Right.
And, I'm thinking about like the fellowship that's even happened here. I'm like, man, I look forward to this. This is iron sharpening iron. Mm-hmm. But then there's a different kind of iron sharpening iron when it comes to discipleship. Like it's not two dads at the same spot. It's one dad much farther ahead in their walk, much farther ahead in understanding grace and mercy and parenting
and hopefully more mature in their relationship with Christ.
Right. Yeah. And I can think back to a form of discipleship that I received that I thought, this is long before I was a dad, but I think it helped me in preparation to become a dad. And it's from a man that both you and I know, Tim Van Loo. Mm-hmm. And he was very instrumental in helping kind of like unscrew a lot of things that were kind of going on in my head that were kind of screwy.
Well, that's a big job.
Yeah, it was, and so like I attribute a lot of his patience. Mm-hmm. He may not have always had the right thing or like the perfect thing to say, but I think there was a lot of patience that he exercised in terms of walking me through my sin, as a young man, that I believe helped set me up. And it's by God's grace and mercy that men like this exist in our lives, that God gifts with a better understanding of patience and grace. And hopefully we're able to do this for some of the dads that are out here, hopefully, that we're able to be dads now. Tim's just one example of a man in my life that has poured into me. Mm-hmm. There's been
as Christianese.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right there. Poured into me. My
like
bucket was empty.
Yes.
And I was poured into. But there has been a unique benefit that has come out of this discipleship, as well as the fellowship.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a handful of men that I would look at. You're definitely on that short list of men. I would say like there is genuine fellowship that is happening. Mm-hmm. Which I think is really sweet, and pardon the Christianese again, edifying to the soul.
Sure.
Is that Christianese?
Sure. No, I mean, yes, but I mean, it's true. Like it's life giving. Not life sucking. So
right.
like when we come to these things, like I leave energized and with a renewed sense of passion for God and Christ and being a husband and father.
Right.
Because I know how life can kind of beat you down and the day-to-day monotony of being a dad or husband or whatever. And I would say, hopefully this podcast is encouraging and stuff, but I mean, it's also not a substitution for true fellowship or discipleship.
Good point.
Because the big difference is, as much as we'd like to, like we don't have a relationship with most of our audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless we do know you and we don't know.
Maybe, in which case you need to let us know that we don't know, that we need to know. But I think that's key too, and I think the part we haven't really touched is, as we're discipled and in fellowship, that the natural outcome of that is then we are in a place of being willing to disciple others.
Yes.
Like there's a group that's both you and I, periodically attend, and there's some younger Christians that are like in college, don't have wives, don't have kids, but they're looking for, like men to look up to.
Yeah, they might want to be there someday, and
right.
So they need examples of it presently.
Right, and so I look at them and see myself in them, and being able to spend time and energy, asking questions and investing in them, and that's kind of the natural progression as Christians. Right. Of we're discipled so that we can disciple. Right. We're shown grace and mercy by God so that we can show grace to others. We are loved much so that we can love others. There's never the end goal of being a disciple of Christ is to, in the Great Commission, is to spread the love and the message of the gospel.
Right.
It's not just for our own means, and then it stops there.
Right. We don't go and hide the treasure, or we hide the light under a basket.
Right.
We want to share.
Right. It's
the
to
treasure,
keep
we
it
want to share the
going.
wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the world might say, pay it forward.
Sure. Yeah, that's the world's version of that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's important, and I think that's why I wanted to talk about discipleship today as being really key to being a dad. Honestly, really being key to being a parent. If you're a mom, discipleship is important too. It's this isn't just relegated to dads, but we want to constantly be in a place where we have support, and we are receiving accountability, because we are going to mess up. We do things wrong.
Speak for yourself. I'm perfect.
Okay. I need the accountability.
And humble.
You are definitely one of the most humble. But we do mess up, and when we mess up, where do we go? And if we have discipleship in our lives, we have people that we can go to. We can receive truth, and receiving truth is a great thing. Nowadays, truth is valued based on how it makes you feel. And
is truth valued at all in the culture? Really?
Well, not really. But if truth is really evaluated, oftentimes people evaluate it, based upon how it makes them feel. And oftentimes truth makes people feel not super great about themselves, because it's identifying deficits. It's identifying, areas of growth that needs to happen in their lives. And if somebody really loves you and cares about you, they're going to speak truth to you and say, like, hey, sure, here's an area that I think you need to focus on. Here's an area of unhealth. And discipleship does that. Fellowship does that.
Right.
And every single dad out there, young and old, needs that.
Yeah.
Absolutely needs that, because the whole point of discipleship and fellowship is to always point us back to Jesus Christ, and is to always make us closer to Jesus in our actions as well as in our relationship. Like how I emphasize that?
That's the good emphasis.
Okay.
Yes, truth.
So I mean that's really my biggest push for talking about this today. There might not necessarily be like grand things and great philosophical points that come out of this, but is that you can't do this alone.
Yeah, I mean, being a parent, being a husband, being a disciple of Christ is not a solo business.
No,
it's a communal thing, which I think is really lost. I mean, I don't want to go too much on a tangent here, which tends to be lost maybe in our American culture, which is very highly individualistic.
Yes.
It can be very easy to miss the communal aspect of the gospel and what we find in God's word. Like with church and with community, it's not a solo project.
Right, and I think if you are here's some more Christianese, community. If you're in community with the body, so we're talking about the body of believers.
Right. Big C church.
Big C church, yeah, universal church. That discipleship can naturally happen.
Sure.
It can organically happen, and I think if community is done right, albeit imperfectly, discipleship and fellowship will happen. You will gravitate towards people, and out of that you will share the experiences with one another of what you're going through, the iron sharpening iron. You will learn from each other, and then there will be people that are much farther ahead, hopefully other fathers, maybe even other mothers for moms that have been there and can speak the sweet word of Jesus Christ, the gospel, into difficult situations, and be able to be encouraging and say, like, hey, this is an area that you might need to focus on. But to do that, to be in discipleship and to be in fellowship, requires being in relationship. You got to be with people.
Yeah.
You can't just expect discipleship and fellowship to just go happen.
Sure. No, I mean, that comes back to intentionality.
We've
like
given a lot of big words today.
I like that word.
Intentionality, relational equity, discipleship.
Ooh, equity.
Ooh, equity.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Is there more that you'd like to add to this?
I'm sure there's. I mean, we're just touching on the tip of the iceberg.
We always seem to be doing that, but I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. I mean, because the goal of this isn't to give a full exposition of a topic. It's hopefully to. I like that word.
I do, exposition, right on.
The call to action here, usually our call to action is, listen to the podcast, leave some reviews, send us a message. But I'd say the call to action on this one would be to evaluate, where you're at. Like, are you going it alone? Are there Christian men in your life that you look up to and you need to speak into your life? Reach out to them, ask them, because if they don't know, it's not going to happen, And on that same note, be aware of maybe younger Christian men in your life that need that. They need the influence of a man who follows God.
Yeah.
And because in this day and age, like, it's increasingly hard to find, someone who is a true man, someone who loves Jesus and hopefully exemplifies that even with flaws. Because we're not called to be perfect. We're called to be faithful to God, and it's gonna.
That's such a good word.
That's gonna be imperfect. And in those relationships, we're going to hopefully point each other to Jesus. Ask for forgiveness when we fail, and hopefully just be encouraging and uplifting to each other and glorifying to God.
I think we should wrap up there, because I think that was such a fantastic point that you made. Is that we're coughing?
Good.
Is that we're not called to be perfect? We're called to be faithful. Jeez, what a well said, perfect point.
You're just making my head big. Well, to go on the Christianese, all glory to God.
All glory to God.
Point finger up, right?
But that is where we're trying to be. Is making sure that we are faithful to God, and there is sweetness that happens inside of that. And so our encouragement to you, brothers and sisters that are listening, is be in discipleship, be in fellowship. And in that, I think you continue to experience the grace and the mercy of God, and I think you end up not feeling like an island of oasis on your own, floating out there in the sea of parenting.
Right. Well, and tie it back to our last episode on risk. It is scary to be in a relationship, to be known.
It is.
And that requires not trusting yourself to be perfect, but trusting God to do what He's going to do through that relationship.
Yeah. Because again, are we putting our faith in ourselves, or are we putting our faith in Christ? So,
right. Yeah. Well, and that's incredibly freeing too when you're actually able to put your faith in God. Then there's no more pretenses of like I've got to pretend to be this certain person. I can admit in my 20s I was a mess, and I needed God, and I needed people to speak into my life. It's not about like, well, I had it all figured out, or even in remembering back to like redemption groups in Marcelo or whatever. Like, there's always this temptation to be like, well, I used to struggle with. It's never this current tense of like I struggle with, because we want to seem like we have our act together more than we do.
Right.
It's okay to like admit that like I currently struggle with these things.
It is.
And to allow God to refine you through those relationships.
And you're right. There is a lot of freedom in that, and that is what the body of believers, one of the functions of the body of believers is supposed to be about. Yeah. Well, should we put a knife in this?
Yes, a pin.
Well, something as I was thinking, I normally wrap up this thing. We wrap it up by saying, hey, we love you, we care about you, follow us, check us out on all the socials and stuff like that, which is all true. We'd love for you to do that. Leave us a review. Helps us get our content out there. But I also feel compelled to say, if you're in need of prayer, shoot us a DM. We'd love to pray for you. We are imperfect dads, but we understand that Jesus Christ is in all and is all. And we engage in that daily on an imperfect level, but we would love to pray for you. We would absolutely love to pray for you. We'd absolutely love to know you. And so please do shoot us a DM, and we will be in prayer for you on whatever specific issue might be going on for you. And so know that you are cared for, know that you are loved, know that you have a God that loves you and wants to know you, and be involved in your life. So, with that said, shall we call it good?
Yep. Signing off.
Okay. Till next time, have a great day or night. Day or night. Yep. There we go. Peace.